open discussion about farm to table, why each and every one of us believe in it, and the hurdles in which we have to kind of cross or trying to cross here in our local community. So I guess, Paula, I'm going to start with you down there. Unfortunately, you're on the end, so someone's got to start somewhere.
Well, I neither grow it nor cook it, but I eat it. But I'm Paula Hickman. I'm with the Community Foundation of North Louisiana, and I was invited here as a funder of several of the projects that go on in our community that deal around food and food issues. I think what is important to me for this food to table movement is really three things that are important for our community. Can y'all hear me? Better. Now, can you hear me? All right. Sorry. I'm Paula Hickman, Community Foundation, and I'm here in the role of a funder of projects that benefit our community, and many of the things that the Community Foundation helps to fund deal with the issues that we'll be talking tonight. One of the first things that I think that is important about a food table movement for our community is economic benefit. I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama. When I grew up, it was known as the hot dog capital of the South. We had a wonderful guy who was from Alabama named Frank Stitt, who totally transformed our community in Birmingham in terms of the way that he really understood the farm-to-table movement. He not only created an economy of wonderful chefs in Birmingham, and he's trained scores, but in addition, there are people out in the outlying areas. The economies out there have really flourished because of the restaurants in Birmingham buying the food that is produced in Alabama for Alabamians. And I think that is very important. Another factor, though, is the cool factor. It's great to have great restaurants in your city and to encourage people to eat well, and I think that's wonderful. Another factor that we look at the Community Foundation is obesity. 27.5% of our region is obese, and I want y'all to let that sink in. That is a startling and very troubling statistic. It costs us $150 million a year to address the issues caused by that obesity. Even if we dropped it 10 points, we would save $70 million a year. And so not only for the individual, but for the community as a whole, obesity is something that I think needs to be addressed, and certainly eating more fruits and vegetables is a start. Finally, with issues of poverty, we have 16% of our population who is food insecure, which means that they do not know where their next meal is coming from. There's too little month left at the end of the food budget. And so they have a very difficult time in making sure that there are adequate they have food to eat. And so by having and Grace, I'm sure, will be talking about this, in neighborhoods that have gardens where people can learn to grow their own food, cook their own food, is a real benefit. One of the most, and I'll just leave this and tell you one more thing that's going on. Shreveport Green is just getting ready to start a mobile market into some of our low-income neighborhoods that they will buy produce at the farmers market, repackage it into all the ingredients needed for a meal, and then give that away with the recipe and cooking demonstrations at various points on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays for people in outlying areas who don't have access to not only a restaurant, but a grocery store, to be able to have access to fresh food. So that's pretty cool for our community.
I'm Craig Smith. I have Smith Family Farms, and we really raise sheep, and we're starting to get into the cattle business, and trying to sell our meat locally, and with the hope of at some point being almost exclusively wholesale, selling to restaurants and stores.
My name is Grace Peterson, and I'm an extension agent with the LSU Ag Center. And I work with the food system in several ways. I do very much grassroots efforts with youth and community gardening and garden-based nutrition education. And I've also been starting actually on the community advisory group of the Shreveport-Caddo Master Plan. I was able to get 2 things written in there that have to do with food, is that everybody has access to nutritious food, and regionally grown food is available in a variety of outlets. And since the master plan was adopted in 2010, we've put together a task force and started an initiative, the We Grow Together initiative, and we're taking a systems approach to how to grow a healthy regional food system for the Arklatex. Because when you look at a food system, you can't just look at an urban center and maybe a little bit around it. You're really looking at an urban center and 100 miles out so that you can support farmers that are in the rural areas to be able to get their food to markets. And when you look at a systems approach, you look at the journey that food takes from seed to plate to beyond, like compost. And when we started looking at what Shreveport has, we have the season and the land and things like that for food to grow year-round here, but we have lost the infrastructure for getting food all the way to regionally grown food to restaurants or schools and things like that, because we really don't have a place for aggregation, processing, packaging, and distribution. And so our strategy has been twofold: to develop neighborhood and rural food hubs that more like a place for the general public to learn about food, what is good nutrition, to understand the importance of physical activity, to understand how that relates to their health. And those, an interconnected web of those rural and neighborhood food hubs, and then also a central regional food hub that could be more of a wholesale food hub where farmers can bring their food, where it can be aggregated, processed, and packaged, and then distributed to restaurants and more like farm to school, farm to institution, those kind of things. And you'll find on your table the green piece of paper, and this tells you more about what we're doing. The We Grow Together initiative, we have quarterly public meetings and we get input. This will give you what a food system looks like, and also the principles that support a healthy regional food system, that it's health promoting, diverse, fair, economically balanced, sustainable, and transparent. And what I've noticed, there's really 2 issues that are separate but definitely connected. Because you look at, we want more regionally grown food. We want to support our farmers. We want farming to be profitable in the Arklatex. And we also want everyone to have access to nutritious food. And it might be that at first they're not having access to regionally grown food, but at least that they have some kind of nutritious food outlet in their neighborhood. Because there are really 4 major barriers for access to nutritious food. One is physical, when that's what Paula mentioned, maybe no outlet. Financial access is an important thing. And 2, knowledge barriers, the knowledge of what to eat and how to prepare it in a healthy way. And with these neighborhood food hubs, that's what we'll be addressing with that, and then keeping in mind that we want to develop the whole region food system. Thanks.
Let me start off by saying how impressed I was with the meeting tonight. A lot of folks were here. I was really surprised. My name's Bill Ludwig. I'm out of Dallas, Texas. I actually grew up here in the Shreveport-Bossier area. Been gone about 30 years. But I was real impressed with how many people were here tonight and how enthusiastic the crowd was for farm to table, farm to table. I wear 3 hats with USDA, United States Department of Agriculture. The first hat I wear is on the nutrition side. I'm responsible for all the nutrition programs, the feeding programs in 5 different states. There's 15 feeding programs: school lunch, school breakfast, women, infants, and children's program, after-school snacks, the dinner program, any of the feeding programs we've got. That's my primary responsibility with USDA, to make sure those programs are accurately used across the 5 states, and that basically that hungry children are getting the food that they're entitled to, and no child goes to bed hungry at night. That's the first hat I wear. The second hat I wear, and I was listening to Paula, her goals and mine are very much the same, is trying to address the obesity epidemic that we have in the United States. Approximately 60% of the kids in the United States are overweight. That's not obese, but they're overweight, and there's many, many reasons for that. We're working with the First Lady's initiatives. We're working with Fuel Up to Play 60. We're working with trying to get fresh fruits and fresh vegetables into the local school system to try and address the obesity rate here in the United States. The third hat and the final hat that I wear is community gardens. Anything to do with the farm side of agriculture. A lot of people ask, why are the feeding programs in agriculture? Why aren't they in health and human services? They're in agriculture because the bottom line is they support American agriculture. We have about $100 billion budget for the agency that I represent, Food and Nutrition Service, $100 billion. 90% of that $100 billion goes to American farmers. So and the bottom line is, we actually support American farmers. So the third hat I wear is community gardens, farm to school, community gardens in schools, anything that will support American farmers that connects back with the nutrition programs.
All right, well, I'm Jason Brady with Wine Country, and I've been involved with a lot of the programs they've talked about, but I got to admit that I'm really do all this for one selfish reason, is that I'm in the business of making incredible food. That's our goal. That's what I have a passion for. And the best ingredients come from the people that you can talk to that grow it, raise it, and whatever. And I just want to make sure and get the best ingredients for my restaurant and for my customers. Through that process, it's how I guess I was trained that way through culinary school. We had the farmers come to the back doors. All the ingredients we had were the freshest possible products. And I said I'd never come back to Shreveport. Like a lot of people, when they leave high school, they got big dreams of going all over. And I came back and I've decided I want to make a difference. And I want to make sure that you can get the best product here in Shreveport. And the architects and by doing it, I've put myself in every position I can to help facilitate that. My wife says I say yes too many times to different things, but I believe in it. I believe in every aspect of it. I've worked with Grace a whole lot. Craig and Evan, we have a few years of a relationship going through the process, and my goal is to try to knock down as many hurdles as there are in this area to bring farm to table. And I think by raising awareness, programs like this, having the support we had over the past week has been amazing. I want each and every one person here to kind of try to carry that on a week from now, 2 weeks from now, and 3 weeks from now, so tell everyone how great it was, come to all the events we're doing, and I look forward to a good discussion tonight. And I'm going to skip the next two because they're going to kind of talk about their whole road and how they ended up here afterwards, and I'll go down to Chris down there.
Sorry, I used to be a rapper, so it's hard for me not to really grab the mic and just turn it out. But having said that, my name is Chris J. I work for the Shreveport-Bossier Convention and Tourist Bureau, and I think I'm probably here because I write a blog, 20by49.com, that covers area food and food events like this, and restaurants and festivals and the farmers market. But what I really want to talk about, just very briefly, and I'm going to fit it into 5 minutes, is I really feel like the greatest asset that this community has is the incredible food, the incredible personalities that are behind the food in this community. We may not have Michelin stars, in our community, but my job is to try to get journalists and media interested in writing about Shreveport-Bossier. And all day long, I try to get people to come to town, and then I take them around to places like Mahaffey Farms and Wine Country and to Dr. Grace Peterson's community gardens. And what I'm trying to tell you is the people we have here are really, really special, and journalists from outside of the community immediately get that. Like, they immediately realize there is something special happening here. I had Poppy Tooker, who is arguably one of the preeminent food media people in the state of Louisiana. She does a program called Louisiana Eats on public radio out of New Orleans. And we took her out to Mahaffey Farms, and she talked to Evan for 45 minutes, and on the way out she was like, has he had media training? He was hitting every note. He was speaking in sound bites. He was so magnetic. And I'm like, that's the first time I've ever taken anyone out to the farm. And she's like, you're kidding me. It's like that everywhere we go. It's the same thing with Dr. Grace Peterson. I mean, Dr. Grace took them to a band full of journalists to several of her community gardens. We just walk up and meet someone tending to one of those gardens, and that person would be so magnetic and charismatic and well-spoken and educated about the garden and in love with the community. It was like I planted them there, but I didn't. I didn't even know that person was going to be there. And that is, to me, the greatest asset of this community is the people. And the only other thing I wanted to mention, and I'll stop, is that if you want to know, in my opinion, why everybody's talking about local and eat local and farm to table in this community all of a sudden, and it is all of a sudden. 2 years ago, you could have heard a pin drop in this room. I'm sorry, it's true. But there were 300 people here, there were 50 a minute ago, and they were all here for farm to table food. 3 words: Shreveport Farmers Market. I mean, something like 4 years ago, the opening day was attended by 3,000 people. 3 years ago. This year, opening day, 12,000 people. That does not happen by accident. That is management and curation and intelligent thought that goes into an event. Things don't just blow up like that on their own. So that's my take on it, is that, and then I'll get off my soapbox, but that is really my take on it, that the farmers market had that big of a role in creating this force that we are in the middle of right now.
I'm Jeff Everson, and I'm just a Chris J fan. No, I'm on the Shreveport City Council, and I represent District B, which is sort of the historic part of our city. It's really the urban core of our city. And sort of ironically enough, it's also the part of our city that really serves as the access point for a lot of our locally grown food. It is probably the highest density of community gardens. It's the only area where we've just rezoned a piece of urban property to be an actual urban farm. We just did that a few weeks ago. And we have the farmers market in District B. So it's a part of our city that, I think a few years ago you would have been hard pressed to find a piece of fresh produce, and now it's where people come from all over the community to get theirs. So it's been really fun to sort of be a part of local government while that's been happening. And certainly people like Grace, we couldn't do it without advocates who come and let us know what the roadblocks are, what the challenges are, what we need to be planning for 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, what goals we need to set and how we need to set them. And so it's been really an important part of, removing those roadblocks to have the right voices at the table, to hear from people like Noma, and to hear from who runs the farmers market, for those who don't know Noma, or Grace, or Cookie, or a lot of the people in the community who've been advocates for this type of getting fresh food into areas. On the downside of my district, the challenging part is that I also have a lot of areas of great poverty that have very much food deserts, very little access to fresh food. And so it is very exciting to see programs like Grace's, particularly, has really done a good job of not only educating people about how to eat fresh food, but also really kind of I don't know, she said a quote the other day that it really stuck with me, where she said, it's kind of easy to plant a garden, but it's harder to grow a community, like, and you need the community for a community garden. So what she's really done is, in neighborhoods like Stoner Hill, in the Valencia area, with people like Cookie Coleman, who has been a volunteer there for a long time, they've cultivated a culture there. I mean, there's older people who take care of middle school kids, like high school kids who take care of middle school kids, who take care of elementary kids, who teach them the culture of gardening and what's neat about it, and they take ownership in it, and it's really a source of pride for them. So it's great to see those kind of things, and I'm really fortunate to sort of have the opportunity to interact with people in this movement and find out more about it and find out what our challenges are, how we can get out of the way sometimes, or how we can enhance things in other ways. So appreciate being here.
I'm Evan McCama with Mahaffey Farms, and I don't know what Chris J is talking about. I really am not that great of a public speaker, but I'll try to talk about it a little bit. Mahaffey Farms for me was just an idea that it probably originally started when I went to the Shreveport Farmers Market, and the first thing I noticed was it was more like the Texas Farmers Market. And there's a lot of Texas vendors there, and there wasn't really anybody local that I call local. And that's nothing against Texas people there, but I just thought, why? You know, why aren't there more local gardens, farms, or anyone selling at the farmers market? And our farm, we've been in timber for many years, and I was looking at diversifying it and getting into sustainable agriculture, and I just saw this hole, and I guess I've considered it a challenge. It's like, what can I do sustainable agriculture? Can I raise organic vegetables and beef, pork, chicken, grass-fed beef, all that? And that's what I started doing. I think that was the key, was just to start and see what would happen. And once I got to the farmers market, I think Noma kind of took me in, and she just said, she was really happy to have somebody locally trying to do what I was doing, and it's just, I don't know how to explain it, just took off from there. It really has been, once we got to the farmers market, I met, it was Anthony at the time, and then Kevin, and then of course Jason, and then we went to the first feast, and it just started snowballing into this, like a community of everyone is talking about getting more Shreveport local stuff. And so I'm just proud to be up here, and I'm just amazed at where we were last year to today. This week is extraordinary. Yeah.
All right, so now we bring in Chef Sarah and Chef Evan of Rich Table. I would say they are definitely huge voices in the farm to table movement, and their restaurant's based upon it. I mean, I think all their accolades point to it. So without any more, I'll let them tell their story.
Pointing at me. So I'm Sarah Rich, and I'm from San Francisco. I actually grew up here in Shreveport, left when I was about 14, back in 1990. You're moving this closer to me. Public speaking is not my forte. Thank you. So I'm very excited to be back, and very excited to be a part of this entire experience with UNSCENE, and meeting people in the restaurant community out here, farmers. We had the opportunity to go to the farmers market on Saturday, and Evan actually went on Tuesday as well. And it's been really wonderful being out here and learning what farm to table means to Shreveport, and learning about how to be a voice in this community as well, and not just in San Francisco.
I guess the idea behind our restaurant, and probably the reason why this is all kind of connecting with us sitting here, is one, she's from here, but two, our whole the whole idea of our restaurant, we go to the market, we see what's good, and we cook it. So we'll go to the market 4 or 5 times a week. I mean, this is in San Francisco, so you can go to a different market every day. And we've been in San Francisco for about 6 or 7 years now, and through that whole time, we've kind of developed really good relationships with farmers. So we change our menu often. We'll change everything every day. We'll change some every day. We'll change none, depending on what's available. So with our relationships with the farmer, we'll walk up and they'll say, hey, I just grew this case of, whatever it is. It's beautiful. You want it? And we'll take it, and that'll be the only case for the season. We'll make a dish, and it'll last the night, and then that's it. So, part of the experience, like we came from New York, and when you can't, people said in New York, oh, we do seasonal food and all this stuff. It wasn't quite honest. Like people use seasonal ingredients, but it was more like calling up the vegetable purveyor and saying, oh, let me get this, this, and this, and you figure it out. I guess for me, the best way to describe the difference between San Francisco and New York is an old chef of mine said it to me best. He goes, here in San Francisco, you can make a dish. It'll be a lamb dish. It'll be beautiful with peas, this and that, everything. And, the guests will eat it, and they'll say, oh, that was amazing. Where'd you get the lamb from? And that's how it would go. And then in New York, you'd make the exact same dish, could be the exact same lamb, everything's the same, and the diner would eat it, and they say, oh, that dish was amazing. How'd you cook the lamb? So in San Francisco, we're actually pretty lucky to have the guests and the diners kind of demand that we use the sources from the local area, because they can go to the farmer's market too, and they'll get great pork, they'll get great vegetables, and if they can do it at home, they expect you to do something even better so that they can go to the market next week and try it at home again. But I guess we just like Jason said, we do it for selfish reasons. I mean, we go to the market, and instead of buying 3 cases of something, we buy half a case of something that we tasted, every other one to make sure it's sweet enough, it's tender enough, it's in season, it's really beautiful, instead of just calling someone up and say, send me 4 cases and you don't know what you're getting. I mean, for me, it's better to see it and touch it. I mean, all that food we got everything from the market, and it was all stuff that we tried to figure out different things and just have fun with it, and I think we're going to get to in the conversation about how it's important for you guys to kind of demand that of chefs and expect them to push themselves to do different things. I guess I had a conversation with someone before, and they were like, well, what if I had that dish at your restaurant that was so amazing? When I come back, I want it. And are you going to make it for me? And me, being me, I was like, nope. I'm not going to make it. You're going to get what's on the menu that night, And, that's an expectation that you guys need to have for your chefs and for your restaurants, because Jason can't make, the asparagus dish all year round if asparagus are only around for 3 months, For those 3 months, you can enjoy an asparagus dish, but I don't know.
I raise asparagus.
All right, so as to get the discussion kind of going on here, we have people at all levels, as you see, of this, I guess, as Grace says it, the full circle, or however you put it, and they're all very important. But I think one of the things that it comes to is education at all levels. That's one thing that has inspired me from what Grace is doing, is teaching kids what vegetables are. And I say that, and people don't understand. There are kids that I've met through the program that's favorite food is a French fry, but don't know what it is made with. And so that's one level of it. And then I think what Evan's talking about is on the level of the consumers kind of demanding at a higher level will raise the bar for all the competition. But with that, I do want to start with first I'm going to kind of point at the farmers, because I know there's lots of hurdles that I face, and I won't stand up here on a soapbox and talk about those. I'll let the farmers kind of, I'd like to get the discussion of what are some of the biggest hurdles for y'all as you see looking in the future for growth and where your end goals are. And that being said, I know Craig wants to be mainly wholesale into markets and restaurants, and you know, Evan, I saw your project the other day, and you're growing up all kinds of different stuff. So I guess start with.
I think Craig. Craig has more experience selling to you, and he's more. He knows more about restaurants than I do. So, and he's got a bigger supply line into the system than I do.
So let's talk about that. Let's get that discussion going on. What are the major hurdles? Without throwing me under the bus next to a USDA inspector.
I don't do that part.
I think right now our biggest hurdle is having our animals processed. We can't.
Gotta get closer.
Our biggest problem is not having our animals processed. We can't raise them if we can't get them processed. And if we can't get them processed, we can't sell them to restaurants. And that's really our biggest hurdle right now, is not having a large federally inspected plant in Northwest Louisiana.
So what he said, everyone, when you raise animals and you have to have them slaughtered at a USDA slaughterhouse, right? So he's saying that there's not one there, right?
Yeah,
Correct. And I'll kind of talk about it too without getting myself in trouble. There's state inspection and federal inspection, and we sit in the corner of a state, which means for a farmer to look at where their market is, it's not just Louisiana, because 15 miles from here is Texas, 40 miles north is Arkansas, and I would guess what 90 to 100 miles is Oklahoma. So there's a potentially huge market there, and that's something that you'll start to hear, and we want y'all to be very aware of inspected plants on it. Now the other thing about it is I'm trying to explain, so you can poke me or yell at me, because I know you're going to get mad at me if I point the question at you.
Yeah.
You know, the other part of it is the consumers voicing, once again, the education that they want local products, and especially on the protein level. And this is something I know Evan and I and Craig and I'll talk about, like even in markets and things like that. And I think Grace is working with trying to get grocery stores and local markets to start pushing local. But I think we all three believe, and I think obviously some of y'all must have a hint of belief in it, that if the product comes from local, it's going to be better. And that plant, I think, is a big hurdle. And
So what are the possibilities of getting a plant?
well, so I know this isn't directly on your side, but I would love if you could speak just a second on it.
Sure.
And
Let me ask you a question. Is there a plant in Ruston?
There is.
Okay, and there's a plant in Calhoun. Okay, I looked at that's actually not in my area, but I did talk to the folks that are responsible for that. So there is a plant in Calhoun and a plant in Ruston. The other side of it is, I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico a couple weeks ago, and this issue came up. And there are USDA guaranteed loans to open up a plant like that. And what they were planning on doing in Albuquerque was a number of the restaurants and supermarkets were going to go together and form kind of like a co-op, go for a USDA grant and open one up on their own. If you're only going to slaughter 10 sheep or 10 cows a month, it's not worth it for you to do that. You've got to find a place like Ruston or somewhere else, or go across over into Texas. But if you've got enough volume to open up one here, then you certainly could. And there's USDA grants to do that.
What kind of volume would you have to make it work?
I don't know.
well, I guess, I'll say one thing on the volume is if you go to the farmer's market, I think there's a few vendors that show up with truckloads of meat. The goal is to keep that going and keep it going. And we have a question back here, so I'd like to.
Let me also say this. I know in New Orleans, I was at a meeting a couple years ago, and a number of the restaurants in New Orleans were looking at doing the same thing. And Brennan's was the one that was backing it. So you might check with the folks in New Orleans, and Mike Brennan, I believe, was named, the Brennan family there. And they were going to open a processing plant that not only did beef, but they were also looking at doing some duck and some other chickens and some other things. I don't know if they opened it or not.
They have.
But they have?
Yeah, they've since opened on the North Shore.
Okay. I was talking to the Brennans when they were thinking about it. So they can give you some good pointers.
There's a question back here.
You're talking about processing, and it sounds like you're mainly focusing on meat and poultry, beef, poultry, pork, but wouldn't you also have processing on vegetables as well?
That's going to get touched on with Evan.
Not at that level.
Not at
You
it.
don't have to bring it to a facility. You
So
can,
what kind of processing would you need on the vegetable side of things?
I can kind of speak of this. As a moderator, I'm answering the questions. That's probably not the right thing to do. Part of it becomes in the tier system of the wholesale, and the process of which the vegetable is supposed to go through a inspected wholesaler. And
Not necessarily.
I mean, from my understanding, you pull them right out of the ground and sell it at the market.
Yeah.
It's more about this, like if you're talking about certified organic or something like that, that's a whole different thing, but there's not the same inspection or processing needed for meat that you need for vegetables. So I think it's more about the vegetables having that infrastructure of maybe somebody, like in San Francisco, we have a lot of small farmers who, then there's this one guy in Sonoma who has a truck, and he goes to all these small farms and says, and picks it up, and then calls me and says, I have this, and this. So I think for the vegetable side of things, that isn't a problem, right?
That's right.
Yeah, well,
Well, can I say? Well, if you ever wanted to get on a scale of vegetables to institution, like into schools and hospitals, you would need a place where it can be aggregated, processed, and packaged so that it could get into the schools that way. But on a smaller scale for restaurants, that's different. But we want to be I'm thinking, let's do farm to school, let's do farm to hospital, those
What
kind
kind
of
of
things.
plant, like what would you need to?
There's certain guidelines that have to be met for schools, and what we recommend is that co-ops be formed, and you don't have to call them co-ops where you've got groups of farmers. Number one, a single farmer can't produce enough fruits and vegetables to get into a school. So it takes 5 or 6 or 7 farmers to be able to get into that market. And also, once you do that, you can meet those standards. You know what those standards are, and that co-op will meet those standards. You can't take a truckload of corn out of the field and drop it off to the school. You've got to have it shucked, and in many cases, if it's going to elementary school, it has to be cut in quarters or whatever. So there are additional guidelines for schools.
But you could take that truckload and bring it to the farmer's market.
That's right.
And sell it on the...
Or to a restaurant. And you talked about a guy who drove around the mini farmers, picked all the food up, and then went to the restaurants. That's kind of a co-op type of arrangement.
Yeah, I'm from Santa Fe, New Mexico, but I lived in Shreveport for many, many years. And I have to say that
This is Sarah's
the
dad.
market is an exciting place. And the tomatoes and the squash are spectacular, as evidenced by the cooking tonight. But I noticed that there weren't very many greens. And I didn't see any root vegetables. And I didn't see any bok choy. My question is, what do you have to do to begin to get this expansion of the produce that's available in the farmer's market?
well, most of that stuff are seasonal issues. Just like they mentioned on the asparagus, you're not going to have asparagus is done for the season now. We start harvesting it in, say, late February through March and maybe April, and then it's over. Actually, we're done harvesting asparagus before the farmer's market even opens.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about.
I understand, but when you're talking about greens, for instance, kale, the weather's too hot already for it. By the time our markets our greens are, starting to end.
Root vegetables.
Well, we have carrots.
I didn't see it.
Well, we sold out probably within the first hour, but we had about 2 bushels of carrots.
Well, maybe
Yeah.
you need to grow more carrots. I got some beans.
Yeah, I never thought of that. It should have grown more.
But
It could be a demand issue, because
I know, that's my point.
Yeah.
How do you get the demand to
it's
get
there.
those
Part
kinds of
of it is
things?
proving that the demand is there, and so keep in mind, when Chris referenced earlier, just a few years ago, the farmer's market opened with, you said 3,000 people, and at that point in time, you'd leisurely stroll into the farmer's market, whatever time of day you felt like getting there, and pick up whatever cool stuff you could, because you wanted to support it. But now you get there at the crack of dawn as early as you can to get as much as you can before it sells out, because there has been that big of a swell of demand for it. And I think that as that demand becomes visible, the farmers start to respond to that and start to provide those products. But it was people were skeptical in the beginning that anyone even wanted it, but clearly they did.
I think the best answer for you there is we're just getting started. Just give me a minute. We'll get you some carrots. All right. All right.
Can I say?
Yeah, Grace.
And I see that as one of the big action steps for next, is that we truly need a year-round farmer's market. And it needs to be every day, because we can plant and harvest something every day of the year here, and we're missing a whole lot of vegetables by not selling things through the winter time. So if we could have a designated space that was open year-round, and met, twice a week, and we need that also to support our farmers. Farming has to be profitable, and if they can have year-round crops that they can sell, then that's a wonderful first step, and I think as a community we really need to push towards that.
Can y'all all email Noma and tell her that Grace said to?
I've already told you.
But I just want to point out that that's one of the things that we've really been struck with coming out here is, we live in Northern California where you can get anything all the time. And of course, there are seasonal issues there as well. It's not like you can get asparagus all year. But, we've really come to, it's easy to take that for granted. I mean, we have amazing, amazing farmers markets there. And so it's really been an education for us to go somewhere else and see that it's not necessarily as easy as it seems. For us, it's very easy. I don't think that I can say that necessarily all the time here, but I think the more people want it, the more the farmers will grow it. The more the farmers will grow it, the more people want it. I think it,
Well, I'll tell you what my problem is. I have a restaurant and I shop every day. I go and walk around, go 4 or 5 different places, see what they have. That's what I buy, that's what I cook, and I eat that day. Guess what? Farmers market's only open on Saturdays. By Friday, here's that 11, not even closed. My problem is I don't have access to decent stuff. And there needs to be somewhere during the week where we can buy stuff. And there's not. I happen to go to grocery stores, and there's certain ones that have better produce, and certain ones I know some farmers deliver to and stuff. But I almost quit doing vegetables, and I started my own garden too, because a lot of my stuff I grow myself. But restaurants need a place to get fresh food all week long, and I don't know where it's at.
I think that starts with a relationship. I mean, you start talking to Evan here, and you say, like, I usually use this, and then...
He's too far away.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. So then when there comes a demand enough for it, and there are 3 farmers and 1 truck, then they come to the city, they'll come to you, because,
We need to do something, because it is hard. And I have to look at something and taste it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I've heard of other cities or areas, they'll use, an aggregate, which would be, I've even heard of a guy that had an old school bus, and he would go to all the farms and had a route during the week, say Tuesdays and Thursdays. He would go to the farms, pick up what was harvested that day, and he would do a route in the city, stop at different places, restaurants, and so it's an intermediate thing. It's the aggregate is a separate business. And, I'm really small. I'm just getting started, like I said, but our next phase in growth would be to add a delivery truck to our infrastructure. But you can't, at where we are today, at least my farm, I'm not speaking for all the others, there are other farms that could perhaps do this, but that's, the demand has to also match if we started that truck this week, I don't know if we would sell everything on it.
And I'm the world's smallest restaurant, so it's not
Right.
big.
But the topic.
I'll say one thing. I went around and I bought up all the Swiss chard, all the kale, and all the collard greens at the market on Saturday.
Yeah.
Well, the main point of this whole thing is to raise awareness, and I think we're hitting on a very key point. I mean, one of the things that I've had trouble with is what comes first, the chicken or the egg. I mean, we all kind of are in this kind of holding pattern. And so, Carolyn, if you want to get the truck, I'll sponsor it. We'll put Wine Country on the back of it, and you can deliver it to me all the time. But I mean, I think this is a true issue, and it's good to talk about it. I mean, we've had the problem. I mean, I can speak for. I have the passion that we have my chefs go out to the different places. I mean, for a few years now, we've gone out to Valencia. We go out to the farms, and it is very much a struggle. And it's hard for me to convince other restaurants to do that because they look at it going, Jason, you're an idiot. How do you do this? Or how do y'all all do it? And so I think this is a great part of the discussion. And Carolyn, seriously about that truck, talk to me.
At the end of the day, at the end of the day, it is a lot more work. I mean, when I worked in New York, we would get into work at like 10:30, 11, and work till midnight, 1 o'clock. Now I'm out of the house by 9 a.m., 8 a.m., and we're at the market, we're picking vegetables, and then we work till 1 in the morning. And at first it was taxing and you didn't really think about it, but now it's just the way it is. I don't think of it as, oh, I got extra work, I gotta go to the market. It's just, that's my day. I wake up, it's like, some days we'll all go, I'll bring the kids and we'll, pick stuff out and we'll go to the market, and that's just the first half of your day. And then, when I was at the market on Saturday, I already saw everybody there, so it's not like this isn't something that you guys do, but it's about just taking that step and making a conscious effort to kind of, force it.
I got plenty of land at my restaurant. Y'all want to come sell, create a mini market there?
Yeah, but that's the thing too, like in our neighborhood, there are those mini markets where they're like just 3 or 4 farmers, and it's easy. You'll go up, you'll pick things, or Jason will be like, oh, bring me 2 cases of this, and it'll all be set up, and but that's the thing though, it has to be worth it for the farmer, because one, gas is expensive, and going out into the field and picking everything and bunching it up, if they're not going to sell it, it's a waste, and on a farm, you never want to waste anything.
Well, when I got the invitation to this thing, the title of the email was like, or the title of this panel was, what's the next step, or what are we going to do next? And I was thinking on the way here, so what is the next thing you could do? Like the simplest, quick thing we could do tomorrow, like literally start tomorrow. And that, to me, would be just to do, if the restaurants here are the ones that are interested in Farm to Table, would just do a weekly special. Just pick one thing and say, I'm going to do a poached egg for Sunday brunch, and I'm going to buy my eggs from Craig Smith or whoever, it doesn't matter. But just pick one thing and just start doing a weekly Farm to Table special, and then we'll work out the kinks from there. We'll figure out how to get it to you, or we'll have to meet it in the middle if we have to, and then it just takes that step, just like with Jason and his chefs. They met us by coming to the farmer's market where we were and started buying little pieces. They're not buying their whole, weekly, all their produce from us, but it just has to be, we have to take a step forward and they have to take a step forward, and then that's where we'll find the bottlenecks and the problems, and then just keep going from there. So I think that's what I would like to see. I've already had Andrew Parsons, by the way, has been really awesome at coming. He'll cater an event and he'll come out to our farm and he'll just buy hundreds of dollars of stuff and do the whole event with everything he can farm to table. And that's a step, because when it comes to for catering or a special, we don't have to panic about, oh, how am I going to get this every week to the guy? How am I going to do this every single time? It's just these first steps. And then so that purchase that he makes to me gets me started, like gets me motivated. I'm going to raise more, and it's propulsion.
And you have to be flexible, like, when we do events or parties and stuff like that, people are like, what's the menu, what's the menu?
Yeah.
And literally, I'm just like, I don't know. You get it when we got it. We built up that trust with our diners to be like, yeah, you just cook for us, you're good. Like, as long as there's a fish or a vegetable or a meat, whatever, Like, maybe they say, I know asparagus I keep using asparagus, but, maybe asparagus are in season. Oh, just make something with that. And that's the trust that we built up with the diners. So we can go to your farm and be like, oh, great, I'll take 3 cases of those and we'll do something with that. Just like this menu that we did, we went to the market and we were just like, all right, those tomatoes are beautiful. Ooh, those green beans, they're great. We just ate a couple, bought a bushel. Oh, those potatoes, yeah, let's do it. And then it was like, it all kind of came together, where on your end, it takes a little bit of understanding that process, because if you go into the restaurant expecting this perfectly composed steak that's on a plate with that's not what it is. That's not what that cooking is at this level. As the level grows and the experience gains and, momentum grows, the chef gets better at it, the diners understand it more, and then it becomes more complete. It becomes more complex. It's not, at this level right now, it's kind of like, look, we're going to cook something and we're going to make it fun, we're going to make it great, and we're going to cook it, the best that we can. And it's going to taste great, it's fresh, it's, beautiful, and you gotta kind of, the expectation is going to have to grow. It's baby steps. I feel like the theme of the conversation we've been having, every single person is on the same page, every single person is on the, yes, it's great for the community, yes, it's great for the environment, yes, it tastes better, but it's all about baby steps and kind of changing your expectations to, well, I go to this restaurant and every time I get this steak with the potato and the this, and every time it's great, and that's what I go to this restaurant for. And changing the expectation to, well, I'm going to wine country to have Jason cook for me. And whatever he's got on the menu, that's going to be great. He usually has pork from Evan, he usually has lamb from, and it just kind of goes together. And that's what's great about San Francisco at this point, because the expectation is they come in for the chef. They come in and say, yeah, what are you doing? Like our menu is like pretty non-descriptive. It'll be like, that tomatoes, sorghum, and sorrel. Really simple. So you don't even know what you're getting. You're just wearing your hands,
We got a question over here.
Yeah, I wanted to, this links to what this gentleman was saying about where's the bok choy and where's the carrots. And I just moved here from Texas back in August. And I understand what Sarah's saying. You do take it for granted that I want to cook bok choy today and I can go straight to the store, the closest one, and get miracle berries and all that stuff that's not here. And one of the things I want to do, I work private, going into personal chef. I'm doing a demonstration at a church in Minden this coming weekend. And one of the things I want to start doing with that and others is introducing the community to different vegetables so that we create the demand. Because they're not going to buy things we're looking for that every 10th person's looking for.
You don't know how to use it, why you gotta buy it.
So, and you have to start with baby steps, because there's a large amount of everyday people that need the exact same thing, especially in this area. And they would try something new, but okay, so if I buy it, what do I do with it? Do I cook it just like I cook the green beans out of a can? So if I start doing these tastings and do it slowly and just tell them, what are you cooking now? Let me show you a new way or how to add mint to those canned green beans. And we just go slowly and then introduce them to bok choy and how to, enjoy that bitter flavor and do something else with it and how to introduce it to stir fries. And then that's the way you build it. Because if you look at your friends on Facebook, just everyday people, they aren't cooking that. They're cooking the potatoes and the meat and chopped vegetables and macaroni and
Good
cheese.
stuff.
It's not a farmer's market, so I think that's where you gotta start, is to create the demand for the maximum amount of.
And you guys do have great stuff at the farmer's market. I mean, I went, and actually I bought, we're going to do something with it, but I bought 2 bunches of green coriander. You know, like, this is something that I get in California pretty often, and, you know, I could tell that no one really bought it, because when I bought it from the lady, she had 2 bunches, and I was like, oh, I'll take 2 bunches. She was kind of like, you sure? You want both of these? You know, like, you can put them in the freezer. I was like, no, yeah, I know it. And she was just shocked, you know, that I wanted them. So, I mean, but.
I think that's part of, I don't have the projection that Evan has. I think that's part of what was fun about this whole project today, because, you know, I don't think of tomatoes and squash as being that outside of the box, and yet, when we were there on Saturday and people would draw, so many people would get squash and they'd be like, squash, I don't know what to do with squash. And a lot of people got tomato and said, tomato, I don't know what to do with tomato. I like tomato, I don't know, what do I do with this? And so this offered an opportunity for people to take ingredients that they maybe would never even buy, much less figure out a way to make a dish from. And I guarantee that a number of those people went home and researched cookbooks or went online or thought about a dish, and it really made them think about what they were doing. And it seems like something that's very small and simple, a little cook-off with 2 ingredients, but I think it reached a lot of people, and I think that's where you have to start, like you're saying. Start small like that and get people thinking.
Well, I want to give a shout out to Grace. She does a wonderful job of training our young people that she's working with, of tasting an avocado for the first time and things like that. Grace, why don't you say about how you train them?
Well, we do actually, you know, kids have no idea where food comes from. And when we first started the garden at Valencia, the only thing we could really plant, because it was late in the season, was squash and okra and a few cucumbers. And when we were thinking, these kids, I don't know if they're going to eat this okra or not, but then I think Cookie over there Cookie Coleman is the president of the Red River Coalition of Community Gardeners, and she really has been instrumental in making this happen. And she cooked this okra, and these kids were eating it. Like, it just was so wonderful. And we have them now. They go down to the garden with colanders. We gather whatever there is, rinse it off, and the trick is getting them to rinse it off first. And then they're eating and building salads and all kinds of things down there. And we, you know, really help them get into their senses with that. And now the culture at that center has changed, to where when we have new kids coming on, and we had to outlaw the word nasty. But when we have new kids come in, the kids at Valencia, you know, say, well, you know, if the other kids are a little hesitant, the kids at Valencia say, well, how are you going to know if you don't try new things? That's what we do here, is we try new things. And if another kid says nasty, and oh no, we don't say that about our food. So it truly can change the culture in a place.
Well, and Grace, Grace is so humble, but they've just received a great grant over the next 5 years to expand these programs across the city at other locations, which is going to be a great thing. But I also have to say, you mentioned earlier, Evan mentioned about kind of as consumers, and I consume a lot of food, and I enjoy it. But as consumers, we do have to start learn the names of you know, some of the farms, learn some of the local branding of some of the products that you see at the farmers market, and sort of ask for this. And it just reminds me of Grace. One time I went out to Valencia to, you know, just I was doing something in the area and stopped by to say hi. And I actually saw Jason there picking up whatever it was you were picking up that day, and then we happened to be eating at Wine Country later in the day. And I saw what he was picking up and some salad special that day. And it was just such a cool feeling. It was such a neat, like, you know, like I didn't think that would be available in Shreveport. And so, you know, learn to ask for that and learn to expect that. And I think people...
To touch on that for a minute, you know, one of the reasons that we have so much that we have in California is that we ask for it as chefs and consumers. So if you if you can develop a relationship with the farmers, you go to the farmers market, you buy what they sell, you get to know them, you talk to them. If there's something that you are not seeing at the market, and you're like, why aren't they selling bok choy? Why is nobody selling this or that? Strike up a conversation and say, you know, I'm really interested in X ingredient. Is it something that you would be able to grow? Is it something, you know, a lot of stuff that we get in our restaurant is stuff that we have said, you know, to a farmer, I'd really love it if we could have, you know, this type of green or this type of root vegetable or whatever. And then they see our interest, they give it a chance, they grow a little bit, see how it turns out, and the next thing you know, every restaurant wants it on their menu. So, you know, the consumer can be a part of that change just through their dialogue with the farmers.
I just want to add to Grace's conversation. Of course, we've been doing this for many years at the Valencia Park Center with the children. And it's changed my eating habits. And you are so right about the bok choy and the Swiss choy and the edamames. It was new for me. And so as an adult, I'm doing that. But the wonderful thing about that is that the children do take you're not cooking. We've been cooking for several years with the youth there, wonderful volunteers. But they're taking those things home to the parents. They tell the parents about them. And there's a whole other market that you can touch by getting the parents. This is why I changed my eating habits. I was doing things that I wasn't sure of, but I wanted to make sure that the kids would be eating and not eating before. So it does change the way of thinking of vegetables that they're not having before. Even simple things like green beans, you don't cook with that anymore. Eating habits that we have. And my second point is that we were talking about how to get food access, and two things we have. We do have We Grow Together initiative, and that's about food hubs and co-ops. And I see those working together like this, getting the farmers to come together, to bring their food together, disperse it out to the restaurants or to the schools or to the community, but it has to come together. And we're really focusing on a food hub with our food system. So this document here has done a lot of work with a lot of people, and if we want to change things, the city is supporting us, and Jeff has been there with some of the wonderful food the kids cook for our, this celebration. So it's changing eating habits, and the kids are making it work, and it's working for us overall.
All right, we have one more question over here.
As a consumer, how realistic is it to begin to target non-GMO sources?
I can answer part of that real quick. It's way out there, and I say not way out there like in crazy or whatever, but it's so far ahead of where we're trying to be right now that it's you won't ever hear me. I don't use the term organic. In fact, I just had a discussion with a farmer in East Texas who has an incredible crossbreed, red wattle pig. Everything's great, and it's non-GMO. It's all this and all this and all this. I mean, it sounds great. And then all of a sudden we get to it, and it's a 600-pound pig, and the hanging weight of it was, and I think you and I talked about it, was like $8.50 a pound for a whole carcass. Well, at that point, it's unrealistic. And so I only say that to say that we need to do the baby steps and not jump so far forward, and build a stronger consumer, a more educated consumer for just asking local. I mean, we will make vast improvements on the quality of the food we're getting, serving, and teaching the kids about by just starting at where'd it come from? Where did it come from?
Having someone like you to kind of bring it up and be like, oh, I mean, right now I think it's about getting the attention on, well, let's just buy from the farmer's market and get this stuff. And then all of a sudden the question is not, do I buy from the farmer's market? It's like, well, how'd you grow this? And I got this relationship with you, and it's like, well, are you organic, or how do you grow? Where did you get, and then it kind of keeps going. But I feel like right now we're at this like base level as far as things are concerned, and it's about just taking those, keeping it aware, and not feeling like, oh my God, we're so far behind, but wanting that as a goal.
Well, look, can I jump in on one thing on the GMO thing really quick? I get this a lot at the farmers market because we're organically grown. We are not certified organic, but at the Shreveport Farmers Market, there are very few, if anything, you can get there that are GMO. There are currently only 7 GMO crops, and I think I can name them without messing up here.
GMO or non-GMO?
GMO, genetically modified crops that you can currently get. I can't even buy the seed to do this. So it's mass-produced industrial foods is where you have to worry about it. Corn, soybeans, cotton, there is some squash, there's zucchini squash, and there is a papaya that's GMO, and I'm trying to think of what's there's beet. Oh yeah, the sugar beet, and I think there's one more. Does anybody else remember the other one? It might. Oh, it's rice. It's rice, and that's what?
Wheat itself?
No, there aren't. It's currently in the U.S. As far as I know, and this is there aren't any GMO wheat. So when you're buying at the Shreveport Farmers Market, unless you're buying cornmeal, you're really not having to worry about it. There are some beets. We raise heirloom beets. That you could have cross-contamination, but generally small farmers that are selling at farmers markets cannot buy GMO seed. It's really not a concern. So that right away should wipe away the GMO fear. You know, I've had people come up to our booth and say, are these heirloom tomatoes? And I'm like, oh yeah, they are. And they say, well, oh good, because we don't want to get GMOs. And I'm like, stop right there. There are no GMO tomatoes. You can't even buy a GMO tomato in the United States, so don't worry about it. So a lot of these things, and Craig and I just talked about this too, which is, you know, being grass-fed or organic first. Let's get the local thing down first. Let's do that. So once we get local, and then you know your farmer, then you can start saying, hey, let's get some. I want
my pig finished with grass.
That's right. I want chestnut finished pork. You know, then you can ask for that after we get it local first, because you'll have control as a citizen, not a consumer. I don't like the word consumer, because citizens have responsibilities to their fellow human beings, whereas a consumer is just a number on a piece of paper. And so that's what this is all about.
See, media training. See?
All right, I got a question in the back.
Well, I'm still hung up on the first problem that we never resolved. Greg brought it up at the very beginning.
Oh.
And that was, we need a processing plant in Shreveport. And we just kind of went on past that.
I think first we need all the restaurants in Shreveport and the grocery stores to buy that stuff, to co-op together to open the facility.
Well, let me finish my question after my mistake. Sorry, sir. Who is the keeper of the information? Who knows how many farmers are on one side that are interested, and who knows how many consumers on the other side who would buy the product? I mean, what I'm asking myself right now, how do we know there aren't enough farmers out there to support the processing plant? Who knows how many farmers there are that want to do this locally?
I can tell you from my...
Start a Facebook page.
Well, I know from Craig and I's experience, every farmer has that same fear. I mean, there's quite a few farmers and people involved in the processing thought process, and there isn't solid information on that. And I think we are growing fast. I mean, everyone keeps saying it's changed in a year. I mean, I can tell you when I moved back to Shreveport 10 years ago, the only tomato locally grown you could get was an heirloom tomato that I got from a guy that lived behind the racetrack, and he had a heat stroke, and his wife hit me with the broom when I came to pick some up. And so we've come a long way. And so to answer your question, we don't know that.
I can tell you, and I don't know how many years it is, there used to be processing plants here in Shreveport. Well, there was one in Taylortown also. And I don't know if those people are still around. I know the guy that was in Taylortown is still around. You need to ask them why they didn't make it then. But that's been 15 years ago at least.
My question is really not about processing plants so much as, for there to be a market, there has to be a source of information. For economics to work, we have to know how many farmers are on the one side, how many consumers on the other side. Y'all also talk about multiple markets today in terms of, on the one side, we're talking about really trying to get nutritious food in the hands of children. There's a whole different market here of trying to get a restaurant that can have the consumers that will come and pay the extra cost to do what you're doing. So we've got all kinds of things going.
So who's the economist and who's the entrepreneur?
Making a market happen around Shreveport, Louisiana. Who's in this area of information? Who's making that happen?
Well, our goal on this panel, and for all of this for 2 weeks, is to raise the awareness that there's something going on. I can tell you for myself, and I know with some of the others on the panels, I would love to know that information and give it to you, but I didn't get much sleep last night trying to keep up with what we got going on right now. I can't do it.
So is there an opportunity? That's my point. Is there an opportunity?
Yes.
Figure out to aggregate a market, to make a market, to get information that begins to make a market.
We are trying to get the awareness going and pique the interest of someone, an entrepreneur or whoever it may be, that is going to get excited and say, well, let's look at this. Let's look and see, is this? We're not up here, in fact, I guess some of us are kind of up here thinking that we may have to be involved in it ourselves, but we're trying to pique interest to the community and raise that awareness to try to get that.
Yeah, I'm associated with every business. And what I know is you have to bring buyers and sellers together into a marketplace. You know that. There are hubs for everything on the planet. Propane is what I'm involved in. There's gasoline in New York Harbor, heating oil in New York Harbor. Propane sells in Mont Belvieu, Texas, Conway, Kansas. And you have to create that place that people know where to go. Get information. It's all information. Where do I get the information about this? And so, again, when would we know in the Shreveport market there are enough Craigs out there that there's the economies of scale that a processing plant could be built here now, and it's ready for now, and we can process something right here. It doesn't have to go to Calhoun. It doesn't have to go to Ruston. We can get it done right here. And now, once that's available, and you know to reach that economies of scale, and maybe it needs some help from Grace or Bob or whatever to get our Paula to get going. And once it gets going, then there are going to be other farmers that, oh, I see how that's working. I'm going to get involved. And then you kind of get the ball rolling. Because you got to have that place where you know when, or that source of that information, where you know when you got that.
Let Craig talk. Craig knows about this. Craig's working on this.
Yeah. Okay. If it comes down to it and we can't find someone else to build a plant, I will build one. I can't have my business done to by something else. I'm just not at a point that I'm ready to run something like that. My business hasn't grown enough farming for me to stop that to start another one.
So is there any other use out there, Craig? How many other guys out there grow up?
I have no idea. I know
He's probably the
Evan's here.
biggest in the state as far as lambs go.
Yeah, we have one of the largest farms.
So what we could do, so I use McCain Processing in Calhoun, and Craig uses a lot of the Louisiana Tech Meat Lab. But we could probably, I've asked Charlie McCain, I'm like, how many beeves and porks are you processing this year? So let's say last year I did 30 pigs. And I said, Charlie, this year I'm going to double it. Can you handle it? And he's like, barely. So there's an answer, is that I'm already Craig and I both are probably pushing the local meat capacity processing plants to their maximum comfort level at the moment. So yeah, we think that there's room to grow here, and we just how to put a number on it, or who's willing to stick their neck out and get going. It sounds like Craig.
I wasn't going to say that out loud. I guess he.
I got the loan for you.
We need the people.
But I think coming here tonight and seeing all the enthusiasm, there is the market. Whether it's big enough, I think someone needs to kind of judge that. But I think in time it will be big enough.
Yeah, and when it's one of those things that if we were to cooperate to get the plant built, or actually we're looking at a local one to convert, then we would really be looking at. It's not that far away.
It would be about 18 months to 2 years to convert one, and probably 2 to 3 years if we built one from scratch, if we started tomorrow.
Yeah, but it's not like we're shut down. It's not like we're, we can't get anything processed. It's just to take the next level step to make it all local and be able to supply the bigger market. Yeah, we would need a bigger processing plant, but right now we're probably as big as I don't know, I'm maybe speaking for myself, but I don't know if I can get a whole lot bigger before we have to have another plant. Or I'll have to start driving to multiple plants.
I'm in the same position.
Yeah, we're both, he's talking about driving 3 hours south to another plant. I'm talking about maybe even going over to Texas, but it sounds crazy because that's the other issue that the USD, Bob or Bill, whichever. Okay, so if I want to sell my meat in the state of Louisiana, I only have to be at a state facility, which is where we're at now. But we're in Shreveport, we're pretty close to the state lines. So really, that's what the other advantageous side of this would be. A USDA plant would allow me to sell all over the Arklatex, which creates opportunity for every farmer to have. That's the point that me and Craig were talking about, and we could even ship. We could even ship if we wanted to. So, yeah.
Did you have a question?
If that answers this question.
Well, maybe not a question, but a solution.
We love that.
Every one of you up there have a business to run. It sounds like you need someone outside of you to get all this information that he is needing together. I'll volunteer to do that. Because I think this is very important to the economy of this area.
I like this. Hey, Pam, this was a success. Well, no, that's great. And I can speak for myself on what any information I can give. And I would assume we would be happy to sit down and try to get as much information.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to having further conversations.
Yeah.
Pam?
And how much, the first problem that Craig brought out was that the problem has to do with distribution, that it is a matter of getting the product to the market. So I'm just curious, we have Diesel Driving Academy in our community. Remember, I'm not, one of y'all, so my thoughts aren't going to be logical. But we do have a truck driver training center right here in this area. Could those truck drivers get trained by going to the farms and picking up the stuff and bringing it where it needs to go?
I think that's going to be a question to the USADAs.
I mean, we'll ask them, but I'm asking, are the
you're thinking a
roads,
little bit bigger than.
like, are the roads navigable? Are the, I mean, is it reasonable to think that an 18-wheeler could drive up to your farm, Craig, or have it fill it with what needs to be coming in town and make it right?
I don't want to be that big. If we were that big, we'd be industrial, and it would just defeat the whole purpose. I mean, that's I'm talking. Yeah, we're talking like a box truck. Yeah.
Farms. We've assessed the farms.
Yeah.
We've got 4 farms. We've got 10 farms, and we're going around.
Your truck would get stuck.
Yeah. I mean, I think I even looked at the Go Waiter guy. I was like, I'm gonna ask him if he'll just come pick up stuff. Just a courier service, whatever. But, yeah, I mean, what's the Go Waiter guy doing?
One of the largest, the largest distributor of food is actually the food bank. And we have talked to Martha Merrick about how we could partner with that. They take it to food pantries in different areas, and then if they could meet farmers at those places and bring food back to the food bank as a hub for that. And we thought about how cool it would be if we could pair, the food bank and make that a hub where farmers could bring their food and have, their grade A products go for restaurant owners to purchase there, and then other products could go maybe as a donation to the food.
Honest, once there's a market and there's money to be made, someone's going to pull up with a truck and be like, I'm driving out there, and this is how I'm going to make my living. I think at first it's about sending that demand so that it's working.
What you do with oil and gas, I mean, somebody's found transporting it is a very viable career.
Absolutely. I mean, our farmers pull up in pickup trucks and they just have them, so I think the driving to the places is going to be the easy part. I think it's a matter of getting the people to want to come.
You got to place the order first.
Yeah. Exactly.
I guess real quick, and I'm going to ask Grace to do this in less than 5 minutes, which I'm not sure if it's possible, but can you explain just a little bit about the grant you got? Because I think it is a kind of a big deal, and I think it's a neat thing. So just the abbreviated.
Well, the grant is called CIPHER, which is Children, Youth, and Families at Risk. And the LSU Ag Center applied for that. It's offered to Cooperative Extension. And the cool thing is that only one application can come from our state. And usually it comes from our administration in Baton Rouge. But they saw all the excitement up here in Northwest Louisiana, and let us go ahead and write that grant proposal and submit that. And a lot of that is because of what you see going on here, is how much support there is, and also that it's written in the master plan about food access, and it's also recently been adopted by our, the We Grow Together has written a food system master plan that's recently been adopted by the Metropolitan Planning Commission. So the grant is about partnering with the City of Shreveport to expand the model program that's at Valencia Park to 3 other community centers in low-income neighborhoods. And the model for that will be nutrition education, food access through gardening or partnerships with farmers. It would also include mentoring, health screenings, physical activity, and community engagement. And so we have, it's a 5-year grant for $660,000, and we're hoping to really enhance and develop this model more so that it can be spread throughout the state, because it's working, y'all. It is. So thanks.
Grace did such a great job on that grant. On June the 9th, the president announced another grant, and Secretary Vilsack for the Department of Agriculture. It's called Local Foods in Local Places. So, Grace, I'm going to give you the information tonight that you can do the research on it. I did look it up on the internet. You have till July the 15th to put in an application. So,
are there any grant writers out there?
no, I think this one's a little bit easier. It's not for that much money, but it is specifically designed to help local communities develop food systems, as well as working with downtown revitalization. So anyway, that's the information.
Yeah, I see you back there.
All right, do we have any other questions for our panel or concerns?
Did you see it?
Thoughts? I'm supposed to kind of wrap it up at a certain time, so
Well, I think I can't be the only one who doesn't understand. Someone who asked Bob this question. We understand that we need a USDA approved butcher. I mean, that's about a butcher, right? A
processing plant.
processing plant. But the USDA does not approve this, does not provide this person. There's not a time at which the population of an area merits the USDA investing in that.
If you had a plant, we'd have an inspector.
You gotta build the plant. Pay the money to build the plant, the inspector will come.
That's right.
It's essentially like a butcher's plant.
The inspector will come.
And does the USDA provide the fees for the inspector, or is it expected that the plant builder provides the fees for the inspector?
You know, I
mean,
don't.
It's like the health inspector comes.
Right.
It's like you build a plan according to their, whatever, and then the guy, you butcher your things, and then the guy comes in and inspects it and stamps all the meat. So it's like.
It sounds like all we need is for you to get going. Right?
No, not yet.
Okay, thank you.
You get more than happy to have some investors.
Well, I guess I'm going to kind of wrap it up, and does anyone else on the panel have anything that they would like to add? Your rapper, Chris?
No. Too sleepy to freestyle.
Evan? Anything else?
No, I'm done.
Well, and I mean, Sarah and Evan, it's been awesome. I hope all y'all come out to the other events this week. Wednesday.
Pig butcher.
Pig butcher.
Take one of Evan's pigs and butcher it down, and we're going to talk about the different uses and pieces of it, so the utilization of whole animal cookery. And then we're going to use that pig on our final event on Friday at the Municipal Auditorium, where we're going to team up with 16 local chefs and have this, it'll be kind of like stations, but it'll add up to a dinner, and we each teamed up with local artists, and it's going to be this pretty fantastic fantasy world of food and art. And then right afterwards, you're going to walk outside and see a big drive-in movie theater that we're going to play Ratatouille and eat popcorn, and there are going to be food trucks. And I think before we're actually going to have a farmer's market in the entryway that he's designing. But the corn people, what is their name? Bradley Farms is going to be there. So now sell corn on Fridays. So I guess there's not a market on Saturday. So if you guys want some fresh vegetables on Friday, we'll get some.
Pam, is there anything else I need to touch on? Well, thank all of y'all for coming. I mean, all of our goals up here is for y'all to go just talk and tell people, and please get people to ask where their food comes from. Just a simple question gets the ball moving, and it educates those around you to do the same. And we'll do our part, but we appreciate everything.